Sup guys, this is Nick, aka Stewie Stag, coming at you for pokervip.com. And today I'm going to be looking at nut flush draw blockers, when it's good to have a blocker and when it isn't so good to have a blocker. It's an area of our game that I think a lot of people misplay. A lot of people don't kind of think about the reasoning about our opponent's range, a reasoning for betting based on our opponent's range, reasoning for checking, all of that kind of stuff. So I'm hoping that I clear some of that up. And yeah, let's get into it. So let's first of all look at a situation when we can use the nut flush draw blocker. So I'm not really going to comment much on pre-flop. We make a stand open, get called. The flop comes down 4-8 deuce of diamonds. Now, the fact that we have the ace of diamonds in this hand is going to be really beneficial for us to c-bet. So we do c-bet. And the reason for this is because opponents in general like to play ace-x hands. Their range is going to be it's going to have it's going to have ace deuce in it more than it's going to have king deuce. It's going to have like ace 5, ace deuce way more often. It's going to have king 5, king deuce, queen 5, queen deuce. So straight away players love to play ace-x hands, and also players love to play suited hands. So they're going to have a lot of suited aces in their range, especially in their calling range. And the fact that we have the ace of diamonds blocks all of their nut flush draws here, which is great for us because it takes out a large part of his range, which would be calling on this board if we c-bet with, say, ace jack with the ace of clubs. And then it kind of puts us, we get into a position where we don't have as much fold equity with that hand. Our opponent's going to call sometimes. He's also going to raise sometimes. So it just makes it far less profitable to bet. It probably still is profitable to bet because we might have like the backdoor club draw, got 2 overcards, and opponents don't tend to hit this board unless they do have a draw. But having this ace of diamonds really does help our fold equity here, which is where we're making our money in this hand. Because if we get to showdown, we kind of need to turn a jack or an ace. Which would be nice, but it's not going to happen all that often. And also another little thing to comment on, there's a lot of turn cards we can barrel on here. Because we've already established that opponent probably doesn't have, he's going to have some draws in his range obviously, but he's not going to have as many. His range is going to become very capped and very sort of like one piece and pocket pair kind of hands, because he's going to be check raising his sets on this board a lot. So a hand like 9s or 10s, probably just going to check call. 5s, 6s, 7s might check call here. So there's a lot of turn cards. Any Broadway card on the turn is going to be great to barrel on. And even a diamond's good to bet on because we have the nut flush draw now. So pretty much this is a great board to bet on because like not just we block his nut flush draws, but we can also barrel on this board a lot. There's a lot of good turn for us. So this is an example when it is very good to have the nut flush draw blocker. I'm quickly going to now look at times when it's not so good to have the nut flush draw blocker. So when's it bad? I'm going to take a slightly strange example, but it still has the same principle. So here we have ace of clubs, ace of hearts. We open, we get 3-bet, and we 4-bet. I'm not a massive fan of my 4-bet sizing, but whatever. And we get a call. Now, on this board texture, when our opponent checks to us, a lot of people hear default bet. They think, oh, I've got an overpair, and I got the nut flush draw, a backdoor nut flush draw, fantastic. Yeah, and betting here is going to be plus EV. But it's going to be plus EV because we're going to get him to fold a lot. But when he folds, he's not folding that much equity. Like, if he has 10s, he's folding like 10% equity. And FIFA, he's not going to have hands like Jack 10 all that often in his range. So we're not getting him to fold. He's not folding Jack 10 anyway. So when we bet on this swap, we're kind of hoping he has King Queen or Ace Queen. Maybe Jacks calls, maybe a slow play King. But in general, if we bet on this board and get called, our equity kind of begins to suck because first of all, I don't think it's very likely that we get called here. I think he's going to check raise or check fold a lot. The only hands he's going to check call with are possibly ace queen of hearts for sure, although we block the ace of hearts as well, so that's even less likely. And king queen, they're the only hands that are going to check call. So against his continuing range, they're the only hands that we really want him to turn up with here, and jacks obviously, but I don't think again that's as likely. Just based on the fact that he called off 4-barrel position, it's possible, but I don't think he's calling more than one street anyway. So when our opponent checks here and check raises, all of a sudden our equity now really sucks against his check raising range, because he's going to have queens, he's going to have nines, he's going to have deuces, and he's going to have hands like jack 10 of clubs, which have a combo draw. So we're not going to love getting in against that player. So let's quickly bring up PokerStove. I can just find it real quick for you and give you an idea of what our equity looks like. So let's say on this board, after he calls, we give him a range of ace queen suited, ace jack suited if he's a bit loose, king queen suited, queens, jacks, tens, nines. What else make? He might even call with deuces. Let's just give him all the pocket pairs, just to further exaggerate this point. I don't think people do this necessarily, but it's possible. King jack suited, and maybe he also has like these hands sometimes as well, just because we made the 4-bet too small. So based on this kind of range, when we bet, he's going to fold all of his pocket pairs that haven't hit set. Tens and jacks might call. And then ace jack suited, he's going to fold, because he's not going to have ace jack of clubs. He might have ace jack of hearts, but he's probably going to fold. So when he continues, he's going to be check calling maybe with tens, jacks, ace queen, and ace queen suited. So we're going to get rid of those. But his check raising range is all of a sudden going to consist of, if I just now put it up here, so he has all deuces other than that one. And then he has all nines other than those ones. And then if we give him 9-8 suited of clubs, obviously. 10-9 suited, 10-9 suited of clubs. Queen jack suited. We'll give him the one combination of hearts, because I don't think he should be folding. And then king jack suited of clubs. And then king queen suited is not check raising. So if we give him this kind of range, so his sets and his combo draws, and then we give us the aces with the ace of clubs, ace of hearts. Pump in the board, which is deuce, queen, 9. And now we look at our equity against his check raising range. And you can see that aces is doing absolutely horrible. And even if he throws in a couple of bluffs, we're still looking at our equity being below 50%. So right now, against his check raising range, we're doing pretty horrible. And against his check calling range, so if we give him like the ace queen suited of these two, because they're doing to the left, the king queen suited of those, and jacks and tens, and give him that range. Aces, although we're a favourite, we're not a massive favourite, and we're kind of hoping that he check calls. So this is a spot where having the ace of club really hurts our equity, and that's purely because he can't have ace king of clubs and get it in with a flush draw and a backdoor straight draw. So it's still combo draw, but nowhere near as strong. So it massively decreases our equity, and also increases the chances that against our opponent's continuing raise, he's going to be check raising. Let's look at another situation, very similar by the looks of things. Once again, we have aces. Get called. And then this flop comes down. Now, this is almost worse in a way, because our opponent's going to have less ace-9, ace-7 hands. So if we were to bet at this, and our opponent was to continue, again, he's likely to check raise a lot, unless he has tens, jacks, queens, but I don't think he does have it that often. So again, we're going to see him check raising his combo draws, like 8-10 suited is going to do this, 6-5 suited is going to do this, 6-8 is going to do it if they have those hands in their range, and his sets. So we're in a very similar situation where we were before, except for there's actually even less hands the opponent can check call with, other than, like I said, tens or jacks. So you get into a position where against our opponent's continuing range, again, they're going to be check raising a lot, and we're not going to be we're going to be awful against their check raising range. And then people stack off, and then a surprise when they see their opponent with a combo draw and then have to sweat it out, or a surprise when they see their opponent with 4s and 7s and call it a cooler. When the Queen of Diamond comes on the turn, I think it's now a pretty clear bet. We don't really want to begin giving hands like 10 jack or diamond draw, club draw, free card now. They're less likely to check raise a turn. And cool. And then the Queen of Clubs on the river is like whatever. I don't think we can now bet. Possibly could, but a lot of his hands we're only getting value now from like 8s and maybe 10s if they didn't bet the turn, but I think they possibly do. So that's another example on the flop, however, where having the nut flush draw blocker is definitely not a particularly good thing. Look at one more example where it's again bad, and this one's a spot where not only is it bad, but it's also we're not going to be able to get as much value as people think here. So we have ace king suited, we open, get a call, and we flop like effectively the nuts here. We have the nut flush draw along with top pair, top kicker. So this is a spot where it now gets to a point where if we bet, our opponent continues, and say they check raise, then we will be wanting to get it in just because we have the nut flush draw, and we also have some backdoor runner boats, which is nice. And our opponent, again, with his 10 jack of clubs, we are, and queen jack of clubs, we're doing just a little bit better against those hands. So here's a spot where if we bet, we do want to get it in. But by betting, we get him to fold like everything other than king 10. And he doesn't have that many king 10s because he can only have king 10 of diamonds, king 10 of spades, same with king jack. So checking here is by far better. This turn being so blank, I don't even mind checking here, but I think betting's probably fine now. And we get a call. And then we river this, and this is great because we now, by checking on the flop, it's very, very clear that we don't have a flush draw. Or a lot of people will say we don't have a flush draw. But now we can, I think here we should be betting quite big to kind of represent a bluff. So I wouldn't mind to see like a really big bet here. And we do go for a really big bet, awesome. And we get called down, and we get called down by jacks. And I think this is a prime example of getting maximum value out of a hand by checking on the flop. We don't represent a draw. We don't represent a king. So all we represent is deuces, really, by betting turn, and bluffs, which is great because we're betting any river for value, and he's going to call a lot of the time. I think I can remember this hand he snapped. Just because we've under-repped our hand, but we've under-repped our hand purely because we know we weren't going to get called by jacks on the flop. And if we were, they weren't calling 2 streets. So we've effectively taken a pot where by betting the flop, we might get like another 4 big blinds maybe. And by the river, actually ending up with another 20 big blinds or 19 big blinds. So it's pretty big here to check this flop. The last area I'm going to look at is when is it good not to have the nut flush draw blocker. And this is a spot I've looked into recently quite a lot myself. I'm going to bring up a hand, and this is pretty much we've got to think of what we did before, our opponent's range, and we've got to think of again how we're doing against that range, and it's these spots which I think it's kind of like the reverse of what we were looking at a second ago. So open with the ace of diamonds, ace of clubs, we get called, and then the flop comes 5 king 4. We elect to bet, which I think is fine. I don't like check raising on this board. I don't like check calling. I think just bet. We're going to get called by a lot of hands and whatever. And our opponent raises. Now this is great because if he has ace 10 of hearts and raises here, and we get it in against that exact hand, let's just clear all this on stove so we can kind of get an idea of how good we're actually doing. And we're going to be stacking up a lot more against combo draws here. A lot more against nut flush draws purely because we don't have the ace of hearts. So if we give him ace of hearts, play okay. We have ace of clubs, ace of diamonds, and the board is 5 of spades, king of hearts, 4 of hearts. So aces against his nut flush draws are now doing exceedingly well, and he's going to have far more nut flush draws in his range. He might even call here with like ace deuce suited through ace 10 suited. So he's gonna raise here with those hands, and okay, ace deuce, ace 3 have combo draws, but I think they're the least likely hands, the most least likely ace x suited hands to call for obvious reasons. And therefore, well, maybe they wouldn't, but I think they probably are. Therefore, we get it in as a far bigger favorite than we were before. He's obviously going to be doing this with his 5s and 4s. We can kind of take kings out of his range because I think they would free bet. So if we now give him a kind of range like this, so we'll give him this ace deuce through ace jack suited. I think this might be a little bit wide, but possibly not. We also give him some of these kind of hands, which he might do it with. But he might fold. This is the thing. He'll raise these and then fold. So he folds a ton of equity, which is nice because we can have just like the nut flush draw ourselves. If he has queen jack suited raises, then he's in a really tough spot. And we give him 4s and 5s as well. And against that range, we are absolutely crushing. So we're going to be getting it in as a far bigger favorite. And this is an area I think people kind of get their thinking backwards. They think that if they had the ace of hearts here, then they're going to get it in as a far bigger favorite, purely because they have the backdoor flush draw. It's harder for our opponents to have a flush draw. But the fact that it's harder for your opponent to have a flush draw means that they're going to be turning up with a lot more sets and combo draws, and you don't really want to be getting in an overpair against, on this board, say 6, 7 of hearts or 5, 6 of hearts, because if we just plug that in really quick, give ourselves the ace of hearts, and we give him say 6 of hearts, 7 of hearts here, and decides to stack off, which would be correct, he's actually a slight favorite. So it's like all of a sudden you go from, when you have the ace of hearts, you're stacking off against a relatively weak part of his range, and we're actually not doing that well against it. So yeah, that pretty much covers all the hands that I wanted to discuss. I have got tons more, obviously, but I think these ones covered the main points. For those who want to know, he just folded, so he probably did have like the 9, 10 of hearts or something like that. Do I think calling here is fine? Not really, because there's a lot of horrible, like there's no real good turn cards. So yeah, I think just getting in on the flop is going to be better there. But yeah, I hope that I have cleared some stuff up for you on nut flush draw blockers. I hope that you're able to use this information wisely. It's something that I think people who don't think deeply about a hand and their opponent's range really struggle with. They still get it in when they don't have the ace of diamonds, if the flop is two-tone, and they get it in when they don't have the nut flush draw blocker. So they're still getting it in against that range, which is great, but they're also getting it in spots where they probably have 40% equity a lot of the time, which if you can avoid is great. And also you can in a lot of spots, if the turn bricks, then you can get it in, because you're going to be getting it in, or maybe not get it in, but you can begin to bluff catch really effectively with a pretty nutted hand. They're not going to expect you to turn up with aces that often. So yeah, this has been Nick, aka Stewie Stag, coming at you for pokervip.com, and I hope that you now understand a little bit more about how to use the nut flush draw blocker. Thanks for watching.